that's going to cover everything for you, right? So, you know, it's nice to have a number of things to look at. So thank you for that.
So welcome. Thanks for waiting while I get through a few technical issues to get the Facebook feed going. So welcome to tonight's program on our wonderful series, Third Thursday, Exploring the Outdoors. Tonight we'll talk about maintaining trails on the PATC. My name is Barbara Dickinson. I'm Executive Director of the Friends of Handley Regional Library. The Friends support the library by raising funds, but have always been involved with providing free programming to the public since 1977. Programming that entertains, informs, keeps that spark of curiosity alive, and in this case, encourages you to take a hike as well as go into your public library and check out a book or find out some more information about the topics that we're covering in this great series. We also want to thank the series sponsor, our good friends at Mountain Trails in Winchester and Front Royal. Just a little bit about tonight's programming. We encourage you, if you have a question that pops into your mind, go ahead and put it in the chat area here on Facebook or on Zoom, and we'll get to that a little later in the program when there's some Q&A time. And that'll give us a chance to see maybe your question got answered already. So keep your questions coming. I also want to let you know that we will be transferring this to the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to catch that later. If you missed it tonight or share it with a friend, you can go to the YouTube channel and through Facebook to watch this great program. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the series host, Susan Shearhart. She's a lifelong hiker and a camper who is a wonderful nature nerd, and we're so pleased to have her come on this program and guide these wonderful conversations with guests on exploring the outdoors. Susan.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Once again, it's wonderful to be here, and I'm very grateful to Handley Regional Library for hosting this program, and also to our friends at Mountain Trails for sponsoring us. And it's my pleasure tonight to introduce everyone to Martha Becton, who is a Potomac Appalachian Trail Club district manager. And the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club is our local club that maintains the Appalachian Trail through, I think it's like 280 miles in this region. And it's quite a large area to cover, and there's a lot of trails in that area. Martha also, as district manager, she covers the C&O Canal at Great Falls. She is a chainsaw instructor, not just an operator. She's an instructor, and she trains the trainers, which is pretty cool, with the National Park Service and with the United States Forestry Service. She's the co-leader of two different crews, the Potomac and Cadillac crew. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Not two, just one?
I'm not a co-leader of Cadillac crew.
Ah, okay. She also, with her partner, Robert Fina, has built trails by hand as well as with machinery in the Mid-Atlantic area. And we'll talk about that difference a little bit too later on. Also, she's done this work in Ohio and Alaska. She has attended and taught at conferences with the Professional Trail Builders Association and American Trails. She teaches the trail maintenance workshops, sustainable trail design and layout, rigging for trail work, and she heads the PATC's chainsaw certification program. So Martha, thank you so much. We're going to unpack a lot of what those different certifications and experiences mean. And I thought, because actually it's rather impressive what you've accomplished in your volunteer. And now let me point this out, this is volunteer. All of this that Martha has done that I've just described is volunteer. She's not paid to do this. So, which is just impressive. So, as a way of talking about how we invest in our outdoor pathways and the spaces that we enjoy while we're out there, let's talk about what trail building and design really is and what it means in terms of building infrastructure, and infrastructure that is sustainable, traversable, and why this approach might have differed from what was traditionally or historically done.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for having me on tonight. This is super exciting. And hello to everyone who's... So my daughter and her friend is here, and they're supposed to be quiet, but I think they've forgotten. Our area here in the Mid-Atlantic and all up and down the East Coast has a lot of legacy trail. Some of these trails that have been used by the Native Americans since before the Europeans arrived. Some of it are trails like the AT itself. You know, a lot of the AT was sort of, you know, walked as they went, just kind of trying to stay on the ridge. Other trails have been laid out, but maybe not necessarily in a sustainable way. So you may ask yourself, well, what's a sustainable trail? What does that mean? Sustainability has a few different concepts to it. Sustainable design includes, you know, is the trail interesting? Is it going where people want to go? It helps reduce the number of social trails, and we'll talk about social trails. It leads for better user experience. It needs less maintenance, and the maintenance is a big issue. And I'll come back around to that. There's a few concepts, you know, a low maintenance and long lasting trail has a lot to do with the alignment, and the alignment is how it's laid out on the land. You know, if this is your hillside and the trail goes straight up it, then it's going to erode a lot, and it's going to be hard to hike on. It's going to erode a lot because the water, when it rains, has no place else to go. It just collects like a gully in the trail. It removes material. It gets deeper and deeper, erodes more and more, and then now we have a high maintenance trail that requires a lot of work to get the water off of it. Sustainable trail design has to do with integrated drainage features, like integrated water management. Again, how is that trail laid out across the topography of the land? Instead of building the trail out of the box with like water bars to help get the water off, you can actually build in little grade reversals to help keep the water from, you know, water doesn't go uphill, it'll go off the trail. It also has to do with the different slopes, and we can talk about some images later to describe the different like slope alignments on the trail to help get water off. We want trails that are sustainable, that do not have high maintenance requirements for a few reasons. You know, some of the trails that were laid out, you know, whether it was the CCC who built them, whether it was folks with Myron Avery laying out the AT, labor was cheap and it was plentiful, right? It might have been some volunteer maintenance, but a lot of it was the land manager maintaining it. And we don't have that anymore. You know, with budget cuts over the years, almost 100% of the trail maintenance, unless it's a really large feature, is done by volunteers. And we're not an infinite resource, right? If all of your volunteer work maintaining a trail is sucked up by cleaning water bars every time you go out, are you actually cleaning them well enough to work? Are you actually getting to all of them? Or are they just failing because they're not maintained well enough because you don't have enough hours in a month? And is erosion continuing?
Good point.
And we're going to talk about a lot of these topics tonight, but having a trail that is laid out in a way that meets like sustainable trail layout or trail layout design principles, it solves a lot of the problems out of the box that we spend a ton of time and resources fixing on our crew trips, right? You know, we have folks going off trail because the trail's really muddy, because it was laid down in a road bed and the water isn't a place to go off. And so the user impact expands and expands. You know, we have failing structures that were built on trails because, you know, they're built out of wood or they're built poorly out of stone. They worked for a while. They were fixing an erosion issue. They were fixing an area that was too steep. But you get right back around to, these are really high maintenance costs, right? Maybe like volunteers are free. No one's time is free, right? It's the most valuable resource we have. So being able to lay out trails that are enjoyable to use, meet the user's needs, are traversable, and are long lasting, really helps you not only conserve resources like volunteer hours or materials, but it also helps you conserve the land that the trail is on, because the land itself is not an infinite resource. You know, most of these are laid out on
Exactly.
parks or public land that has boundaries to it, right? You can't just sort of like keep moving the trail around because it's failing again and again. You need to figure out how to use the land you have and lay it out in a way that's sustainable.
Great point. I think that you explained it beautifully, what some of the major issues are and why we need a sustainable trail design as opposed to maybe before it just kind of happened. That there needs to be thought and planning and design to be sustainable and meet our needs and keep costs low. Because that is a factor and I think COVID showed that too, with the least amount of hours that our volunteers had to go out there and maintain the trails. I know they're playing catch up right now. Why don't we talk a little bit about basic terms associated with trail design, because you mentioned a few things in your opening remarks that maybe could use a little definition of. And so maybe you might just want to give us a list and what they are so that as we talk further, people will understand what that is.
So it might be helpful. I pulled a little bit of material from one of the workshops that we do for teaching sustainable trail design. So if you guys can give me control, I'll pull up a few
So
slides.
right ahead and share your screen. You should be able to.
You should be able to. Yeah.
At the bottom, you should have a button to do that.
Where is my slide?
Go to the bottom, you should have a green button that says share screen.
I got it.
Awesome.
Okay. What's it? All right, let me make this full size. If I can find the right button. Pardon me while I fumble with the technology. It's down here. Hold on one second. I moved the Zoom thing where it wasn't useful. Shoot, I'm not seeing how to make the slides a full size.
It might be up here in the
I think the
might be
Zoom.
already on your left on this. I mean, we see your slide.
Under the word arrange, you see the
range
there?
I do.
Is it that one, that little arrow? Under arrange, right on.
Oh, no.
To the left.
Go to the right. Now go to the left.
Yeah, to your left.
To the left.
Left, the other way. There. One more. There. One more.
No. Now to the right, where underneath the word arrange, there's a little arrow.
Here.
Now to the left.
It's okay. Let's work with what we have.
Yep.
I'm so sorry. I should have practiced earlier on how to make this big. I thought it would have been, oh, let me do one more try. View, present.
Full screen at the bottom, sweetheart.
I got it. Okay. So a lot of folks who've hiked in our area, you know, you've hiked on this. This is not a sustainable trail.
No.
This gullying is just going to continue and continue. And we have more examples of that. So slope or grade, grade reversal, trail watershed. So on the trail itself, we have trail slope, which is like what you are experiencing as you traverse the trail. You have the side slope of the hill that you're building it on. And you also have the outslope of the trail. So the trail watershed for what's in this picture would be right here. And so like when it rains and water is coming down, it's gonna land down on your trail. And if your outslope is actually angled off to the side, your water will likely continue off to the side and down the mountain. That's good. However, if your trail slope is too steep, we'll just say like generally greater than 10%, when the water comes down the side of your mountain and it hits your trail, it's so steep along the trail, it might actually travel along the trail. And that's when
Right.
you start getting erosion.
Mhm.
Those are a few terms that we use a ton. The back slope is important when you're actually building the trail. This needs to be laid back like about the angle of repose of the material. So generally for our area, it's like 45 degrees. Otherwise, it'll collapse onto the trail itself. Let's go to the next one. We talked about what sustainable trail. Contour alignment. So this image here, you can imagine looking at a topo map and you see the contours on it. You know,
Oh,
they're all
yeah.
the same elevation. So contour alignment means that your trail kind of follows those contours. It does
Mm.
not go straight up and down the mountain, right? That leads to erosion issues.
Mhm.
But contour alignment lets you work with the features and also maintain a gentle grade on the trail itself to minimize erosion. We talk about average slope of the trail. So you might have a short little segment that is steeper than 10%, but your average grade, you want less than 10%. And you do that by trying to maintain your individual grades at less than 10%. And this one doesn't really meet it. This little example here. This is actually still too steep. A few more terms we use. I'm going to skip the half roll because that takes a little more explaining. A grade reversal. So grade reversal simply is this is water, right? The slope the water sees going down the trail dips down and then actually goes back uphill just a tiny bit. This
Mm.
gives the water an opportunity to exit. Okay, so a rolling grade dip or a water bar does this with a built feature, but a grade reversal you actually design into the trail when you're doing the layout. And it's not a piece of infrastructure has to be maintained. It's just literally part of the trail. And then this is an image. They're so hard to capture on with a camera. But we're standing in the uphill side here. We hike down. There's a little dip down here. We don't even notice it when we're hiking. And then we go back up a little bit. The elevation change is tiny, a couple of feet, if that. But it's spread out. So it's gentle, but it gives that water an opportunity to exit off the side of the trail. Talked about outslope a little bit in that photo with all the arrows. Again, your outslope is important to allow the water coming down the mountain to shed off the side. Folks have a tendency to want to line the trail sometimes with wood. Don't. It just traps the water on the trail, right? You're starting a gully and you do that, or you're starting a puddle, and no one likes to hike through puddles. So when you build your trail, you actually build some outslope into it. You don't want it too steep because it's uncomfortable to hike on, but 3 to 5% is usually enough, even after it compacts. A few more quick terms. We talk about drainage. This is an image of, it's just a low spot here that the trail needs to be rerouted because it's in the low spot in the topography, and the water collects and it creates, hikers don't like it, right? They want to go around it. And so it creates a greater impact on the land.
Yeah.
This was probably a roadbed. Roadbeds make horrible trails. But our forests around here are full of them from all the
They're
logging.
full of them, they are.
Yeah. So sometimes the train grades aren't too bad, but just the quick and dirty logging for roadbeds are no good. And a few more terms that'll come up today are, we call them social trails. Usually they're user created. So this is up in Acadia. They have these cool bog walks. So usually a social trail pops up because the user's need wasn't being met. Okay, this trail goes all around this lake. It's super pretty, but they didn't build in access points to go check out the lake. Okay,
Right.
so people just went.
Made their own.
Yeah. For this area, it's not a huge erosion problem yet, but there is a little bit of a grade here, and it will become one over time. What they did is they just formalized it. They put their bog walks in this is a good solution for this particular example, because it gets people's feet off the ground and they still get to go where they want to go. Yeah, sustainable trail design, you try to acknowledge where people want to go and you let them get there in ways that are sustainable. And this trail was took right along to the edge of the water here because that's where people wanted to go, and that's where they took it. This muddy area on the AT near Keys Gap, the user impacted area across some of this was literally over 100 feet wide, because the trail's in the low spot. It gets wetter and wetter. People try to go around the wet, and it just spreads the wet. And so finally they found a dry spot over here and they're taking this social trail, but I can guarantee you it's going to get wet in a couple of years too, because it's going to get compacted. So social trails are something that a poorly designed trail can create, actually. I think that's enough for now. We have some more items, but we can talk about it later.
Awesome. Thank you for that, because I think that helps as we go along to understand. And I think the social trails one especially is a big one as it impacts the soil and vegetation in the area. And I know we're going to talk a little bit conservation issues later. Another thing that we talked about initially is trail design and building and maintenance, especially trail design. All of these things involve a lot of different agencies because the trails, particularly like the Appalachian Trail, I mean, it's 2,100 miles. It goes through 14 states. It's going through private, state, county, federal lands. And all of these different pieces are managed by a different organization or state entity. And so there's all of these different key stakeholders involved. So why don't we talk a little bit about the processes required to ensure compliance among all these people, and particularly the NEPA guidelines for trail building as well?
Well, and this is a good moment to sort of make a correction to the intro. So, and it's related. So PATC, we maintain that couple hundred miles on the AT, but we also, our total mileage of trails that we maintain is over 1,000. So that, whatever, 700 and something that we maintain off the AT, it's state, federal, county, right? It's all that stuff. Most of it's federal, but we also have county. So you mentioned compliance, which is a great word, and you mentioned NEPA. So NEPA is the National Environmental Protection Act from the 70s. Basically, it's saying, hey, we need to understand our impact, our environmental impact when we do stuff, right? If we build a parking lot, do we need to take down trees? Is the parking lot in a wetland? Do we need to deal with the runoff, right? And you might be thinking city. Well, imagine like the parking lot at Old Rag, right?
Exactly.
It's near a creek.
Good example.
Yeah. So the compliance process is the term used for finding out if you're sort of going through the whole NEPA process of, okay, here's our problem. Here's our proposed solutions, and there might be more than one. Here's what we think the impacts are, and here's what we're proposed to mitigate it, or maybe the park will say, here's what we're going to do to mitigate it. And you might be thinking, well, these are just trails. So trails that erode, that erosion often ends up in the streams, right? And the number one environmental pollutant to the Chesapeake Bay is sediment. So it does matter. And the NEPA process, you know, maybe we need to reroute that section of the AT that I showed you the photos of. So who's the land manager? For that particular one, it's the Park Service. The process would be similar for the Forest Service. Ideally, a new, well, there might be a few options. One option might be to the solution, you know, the problem is we need to get hikers' feet out of the water because the hikers are impacting a really large surface area of vegetation because of it. One of the solutions could be we build a boardwalk, right? Boardwalk. One of the solutions could be we reroute the trail, okay? They both have pros and cons. the NEPA process, all the ologists would come out, the people who do the plants, like the biologists and the uh, archaeologists, right? Because maybe that was a
course.
Civil War thing there. Um, the biologists might be like, hey, there's no real plant issues, but the archaeologists might say, yeah, no, we can't move the trail off of this because where you guys want to put it, there's like, Mosby bullet remains or something like that. So now we're stuck with a boardwalk, which is a higher maintenance solution, but it might be the better environmental solution. And the whole process should provide basically an outcome that has sort of meets all the needs, solves the problem, it's doable, whatever, hopefully budget things don't drive it too much, but sometimes they do, but also solve the needs of protecting the resource, right? Because the Park Service is like one of their missions is to not only allow the public to access the resource, but to protect the resource. For the federal agencies, it's going to be very similar. For the state parks or the regional parks, it really just kind of depends. My partner, Robert Fina, he's a district manager for Bull Run Aquapon Trail, which has a lot of Civil War stuff. And so that's their biggest complication when we're doing a really, I say we do a lot of stuff together. It's his park, he's the lead on this, but I may be out there with him, doing the layout. We'll just blindly do the optimal layout, and the park will come back and we're like, we have Civil War stuff. So like, okay, well, what maps do you have? Like, what information can we have access to so that we can do this informed? So, there has to be sort of a back and forth to get a good outcome.
It sounds like that process itself could take some time since you're bringing all these different professionals in.
Yeah.
I would assume that they're looking at the trees, the plants, and perhaps wildlife too. There may be some endangered species in the area that need to be identified as well. So all of those types of studies or checking different data that's already collected for the area has to be researched and opinions submitted. So this can take some time. It's not a quick conversation.
It can. And I do kind of feel like, with the staffing levels for a lot of the federal agencies, it's not ideal, when it comes to like doing a proper review. And it's the same folks who are doing reviews on literally the new parking lot that's overdue or the new building that needs to be built. So it can take time, and it also can benefits from having like a champion. So like, hey, do you need anything from me? What can I do to help? Help move it along. And I also want to say for folks who are rolling their eyes, just like, you really have to do this for everything? No, you don't. I can speak to C&O Canal, which is Park Service. And this list would be created pretty much for any federal entity at that land. There's a list of categorical exclusions, which, like when we go out to clean, rolling grade dips or trim vegetation or do sort of minor but all the time trail maintenance stuff, they went through and they assessed, so like we understand the impact. We don't need to go through the process on this. But if I need to do a relocation, or sometimes we're doing bridge replacements. COVID kind of stopped it, and we're almost getting ready to do it again. That needed to be looked at because there's some little crustaceans and stuff to make sure that we're not not causing additional issues.
Right. Well, I think that was an important point to make, that some of your work, those exclusions, you can schedule your work crews and just go and take care of those things, which is great, because if you had to get every little thing approved, nothing would get done.
Yeah, honestly, for a trail maintainer that has a section, which is how PATC works, all of our miles of trail, have a maintainer assigned. For the most of that work, you don't need to talk to the park to do it. Okay.
Right.
But it depends on on the park or the forest and the
Right.
location if you're going to put in a feature, right? So maybe if you're going to put in stairs, you're going to put in big rolling grade dips, if you're going to put in a bridge, or you're going to relocate the trail, that is something that you need to understand whether or not it needs to go through the process. And as a regular maintainer, you wouldn't probably be doing that. You'd be working with your district manager who would have a better understanding of what the needs are.
Right. So then that becomes a real collaborative effort within your own team, your own organization, and then how you work with those land managers and services, park services or whatnot. And I can see that I think that kind of opens up the view too. It's a much broader view. It's not so localized. It can become localized, but I can see how it becomes much broader and a lot more people looking at the broader picture and how these areas are being used and how we're creating these spaces and what we're doing. I was curious because we've talked about the National Park Service and Forestry Service and what you do. Are there other organizations that maybe professionally provide training or workshops for trail builders and things like that?
Yes, there's a few. I'm very passionate about them. So the first one is PTBA. It's the Professional Trail Builders Association. Hold on one second. Hey, Eddie. Okay. The Professional Trail Builders Association. So they hold an annual conference and anybody can attend. It's difficult to become a member of the association. Like you need to meet certain criteria and be a trail builder, all this sort of stuff. But anybody can attend the conference. You pay your fee and they have great workshops. And the workshops are amazing. They have stonework workshops, the sustainable trail design and layout, which is how Robert and I got started on the sustainable track with this. And the talks during the conference are just really eye-opening. A similar thing is American Trails. American Trails has a conference every other year. It's the International Trails Symposium. They also have a lot of information online, things that you can just watch, and it's all going to be quality. The symposium, fabulous. If, again, you might be like, well, why would I go? Well, if you're interested in like really learning more about just trails and getting involved and sort of more than just hiking trails, it's really good. And it's also easy to make contacts too at these places in case you want to get involved in like something other than PATC too. In addition to that, there's SAWS, the Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards, SAWS, and they have courses. I'm not sure how to say it, how to describe it. Robert and I are actually going to be working with SAWS in the fall with training one of their crews in rigging. But they usually have courses in May. COVID kind of has that out of whack. They do a lot of crosscut saw training. I believe they do rock work. And I believe they teach rigging. But they're basically trying to help the Forest Service and the Park Service and the stewardship groups rebuild skills that maybe were a little more common, say back in the 30s when a lot of our infrastructure was built.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting comment. So you mentioned that you and Robert, so you continually educate and expand your knowledge. And then are you sharing and giving workshops and whatnot to the volunteer corps within PATC and beyond?
Yeah, we are. And even though it's just me sitting here, Robert Fina is my partner, both like in life and in trails. And it's a team effort. We bring slightly different things to the training component, and Robert's just life skill set is different than mine, and we complement each other a lot. So some of the trainings and workshops we offer through PATC, we have basic trail maintenance. So when you become a maintainer, sort of like this basic toolbox of things that you're going to be doing all the time out there. sustainable trail design and layout. We also train, we haven't done this so much in PATC, but we've done it at conferences. Yes. Do you want to come say hi? Sure. Here, have a seat for a second. This is my daughter.
Hi. I
So
hear she's a great volunteer as well.
pretty much every workshop we teach, Eddie could do it solo because she's been doing this since
Oh,
she
I
was.
love it. That's amazing.
Is there anything you want to say, or are we just checking things out? Checking things out. All right, well, you're welcome to stay. I'm going to keep talking. Okay, help her soon. Thanks. All right, bye. Logistics. We also, at the conferences, we've put on how to give a tailgate safety talk. Which,
yeah, that's important.
Yeah, it is. Well, when you're leading crews, you know, there's all kinds of situations, right? There's sometimes there's park staff, but usually it's volunteers leading volunteers, right?
Right.
Or maybe like a CSA, Student Conservation, SCA, Student Conservation Association leading volunteers. So what goes into a good safety talk? You know, a good tailgate safety talk. How do you account for making that work trip safe? You can't just be like, be safe out there. Like, no, it doesn't work. So I train that. We teach trail rigging. So both using a MASDAM, which is kind of lighter duty, and then also grip hoist. Chainsaw certification. And also we do some workshops on basic small engine maintenance. Because, I mean, if you don't know, folks who are listening, weed whackers are a very often used tool in our area for trail maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
They can be a real pain in the butt. It's like, oh, it's so simple, but you get out there and it's like, it won't start, or you flooded it, or you pulled it out of the toolbox and you even know what to check to see if it works right, how to change the string head. So we do basic, sort of how to, it's not small engine repair, but it's how to keep the tools running. A little bit of troubleshooting if it's given you a hard time.
Oh, well, that's all important things to know. Thank you for doing that. And is that, so you mentioned those type of workshops and the tools. And so, and you've talked about doing these safety talks. So how about when you're out there doing the regular maintenance, what type of activities might that include? Because we talked about vegetation removal, but I'm sure it's more than that.
So, and also to sort of clarify some terminology, because we've been like, I know I talk too fast for these things, kind of. There's like maintenance that a maintainer would be doing who like has a trail section. There's the kind of maintenance that we do with crew work, which is usually a little more involved. And then there's sort of like special projects like building bridges and building new trail. For the basic maintainer work, which is the, what do you call it? It's what happens all the time to keep our trails running well and to help keep them from getting eroded. Keeping the water diversion features clean. You know, I'm talking about water bars. The water diversion features are literally what keeps the water from building, accumulating a lot of volume, accumulating a lot of speed going down the trail, and moving a lot of sediment. So you want the water's the enemy, like in every way.
Right.
So basic functions is keeping the water bars clean, which, you know, like, do I take Windex out there? No, they're cleaning the sediment out of them that has built up. So it takes a shovel or maybe a mouth. Also, sometimes the trail will get like a little berm on the downhill edge, and you'd like to knock that off to help, again, the water shoot off the side. Those are super, super important. If the trail has any drains or any culverts, keeping those clean. I'm going to turn the air purifier off because it's going to get really loud. Aside from those things, clipping vegetation, and kind of depends on where the trail is as to what those guidelines are. But generally, you want to clip the vegetation back so that it's not touching the hiker or the
Right.
user because of ticks.
Right.
Sugars too, but ticks carry disease.
Mhm.
So, that would sort of depend on the area as to what tools and sort of like how wide to trim that back. And also the canopy, the trees coming into the space. I'm going to trim those back too. So blazing.
Mm. Yeah.
Blazing's super exciting, but you don't have to do it that often. I mean, it's like every couple of years. Sometimes a storm will come through and take down some
Mhm.
trees. Or a blight, like the ash borer took down a lot of ashes.
Right.
So you might need to replace, have some trees to blaze that weren't blazed before because trees that had the blazes are
They're
gone.
gone. Mhm.
And there's guidelines for doing for good blazing. You don't want to overblaze, but
Right.
you want people sure they can find their way.
Exactly. Awesome. So you mentioned there was like kind of like 3 different types of work and maintaining being done. So you talked about the basic maintainer. Let's talk about crews because you're part of 2 crews,
Yes.
and maybe talk a little bit about, how they were developed, and then, what's that culture like, and what type of work do you do as a crew?
So I'll try to be brief. The crews are really exciting, and I feel like it's like the gateway drug in the trail work.
And I will say, I have met several of the crews out there, and when the very first one I met, I was like, they're cool. I want to be a part of that group. They're having a blast. They're like really nice people. Like, how do I get involved with that?
That's been my experience. So I'll talk about Cadillac Crew first, because they're 2 very different experiences. I'm going to talk about Cadillac Crew and then Potomac Crew. So Cadillac Crew is a roving crew. A lot of the PATC crews are associated with a particular district or particular geographic area. Cadillac Crew is not. They literally rove all of the PATC lands, and every once in a while we'll do bonus lands. And the crew's been around since the 90s. There's some legends on how they got their name. The popular one is, after the crew came through, somebody of, who's known in the PATC came through and was like, look at this trail, it's so wide and nice. You could drive a Cadillac through here. So the unique thing about Cadillac Crew is we spend the night. So we work the 4th Saturday of every month, 4th weekend of every month. We often work Saturday and then a half day Sunday. We pre-COVID, and we're getting back into it, would camp or we would lodge nearby. So a lot of folks show up Friday night, and most folks stay Saturday night. This takes on different forms. It's rarely primitive camping. There's usually a facilities involved, like showers and kitchen and a building and stuff like that. And the first one I went to was in 2016, it was in April, and they didn't know me at all, but I walked in and everyone was like, hey, how are you doing? And the person walked in behind me and they're like, hey, so-and-so, how's it going? How's your blah, blah, blah? It was like it was like a weird family reunion in the best of ways. Like everyone clearly knew each other and enjoyed the social interaction. And we actually did get some work done the next day. So the crew is run by Dan and Ellen Fear. And committee is not the right word, but the different tasks of keeping the crew running are split amongst a group of folks. We have a person who puts together our emergency information for every trip each month. Robert Fina, my partner, is kind of the construction lead. He'll go out and scope the work, sometimes with others, to look at the problem, come up with the solution, like what we're going to be doing. He does all the tool logistics and all the, he sort of is like the manager for the work on the trip. We have sort of a crew of us that are the article writing team. It's like crowdsourcing article writing amongst like a half dozen people or so to get it into the newsletter. It's a team effort. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. And for folks who, you know, some folks are there every trip, but it's not a requirement. You know, some folks come out like 2 trips a year and they're just as welcomed and they're just as much part of the crew. So that's Cadillac Crew. And that's also like my daughter's like extended family. So, Potomac Crew. So my partner and I became district managers early 2017. And his district is just south of the Beltway near Clifton off of Bull Run. And mine is just west of the Beltway, Sino Canal, Great Falls. And our districts needed a lot of work. And so we decided to start a crew to tend to our districts. Robert is also the shelter maintainer for the Jim and Molly Denton shelter.
Oh, the Hilton of shelters. Love it.
I know.
I take all the newbies there, all the newbie backpackers. That's their first experience because it's all downhill after that.
It's all downhill after that. I mean, there's a shower and there's horseshoes.
Exactly.
Right? Oh, and the French door privy, right?
Yes, it's beautiful. And there's beautiful flowers planted around the shelter as well. It's so lovely. I mean, it really has a beautiful atmosphere there. It really does.
Nice.
That's night number 1. Then we go primitive after that.
No more showers. So, so Potomac Crew, it's kind of like we rove because we also help out. Robert he's working on this massive project at Turkey Run, which is inside the Beltway along the Potomac Heritage Trail. That's been basically a Potomac Crew project ongoing. It's a day crew. So we might meet once a month. We might meet 3 times a month. Most of those trips are put out on Meetup. So sometimes, you know, we get new folks coming out all the time. Sometimes it's just if it's a real specialized work, we might just, you know, work with the folks that we work with all the time, like if it's a rigging project or something. But it's a day crew. You know, we show up at like 8:30 or 9, work until 3:30, might hang out for a little bit afterwards, and then it's, you know, see you later. There's a lot of regulars, and there's a few folks who come out to Potomac Crew who are also on Cadillac Crew and vice versa. It's a much different feel, but the camaraderie part, I think is quite good amongst both. The diversity and like the diversity in a couple different categories is a little higher on Potomac Crew. And I think part of it's just the nature of it being on Meetup and we're closer into the city. Yeah, you know, you come out a few times and at that point you know people because you've, you know, moved dirt all day or moved rocks all day or, you know.
And that's what I was going to ask, you know, how is that work? Because it seems like it's a different type of work that you do. I've seen the crews in action. I've seen them moving the rocks, like at the Blackburn Trail Center, the nature center there. I saw them moving rocks and doing projects around that center one weekend. So it's very different than what your basic maintainer would be doing.
Oh, yeah. So again, I would say for both of those crews, and as I'm talking, there's mini crews in PATC. So I'm just talking about the two that I'm in and I'm very familiar with. So, you know, sometimes Cadillac Crew is basically helping a district manager catch up on just regular maintenance that's not been done for a couple of years. Like that used to happen with the Tuscarora. The Tuscarora is in better shape now than it used to be. But that was my first crew trip, was just literally vegetation maintenance on the Tuscarora. Or it's easy for things. Nicholson Hollow is a trail out near Old Rag. And one of our trips was basically cleaning water bars on Nicholson Hollow. But these were like CCC built water bars. And the drain on a few of these was like 30 feet. Okay. Oh. That's not a maintainer. Maintainer's not going to do that in a day.
Right.
But a crew having like 3 or 4 clusters of 3 or 4 people, you know, we got a lot done. So sometimes we help people catch up. Sometimes we are actually building a relocation. So
Mhm.
when the trail has been rerouted, we've been working on the relocation at Loudon Heights for like
Ah, yeah.
years,
We've heard
with
about
other,
that.
yeah, with other entities too.
Yeah.
Um, so 2018 was the year of rain. We just had record
Mhm.
rain, which meant record floods and record bridge dislocations.
Yeah.
Um, after that year, we went up to Sleepy Creek, somewhere out in West Virginia, and brought the rigging, and we put a fiberglass bridge back on its footings because it had gotten wandered off its footings because of the
Mm.
flooding. So, and Potomac crew does the same kind of stuff. We do less of the general maintenance on Potomac crew, but that being said, like, doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Robert had a lot of water crossing issues for the first couple years in his district, and most of them have been resolved for like long term now or midterm. But a lot of putting water crossings back in place and just building bridges.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the project we were doing at Turkey Run was kind of a special one, which isn't, it's hard to say this is an exemplary project because this isn't going to happen again anytime soon, but basically a wooden staircase was put in with 6x6 numbers that are, I wish I'd gotten the stats from Robert, but I think it's the biggest trail staircase in the Mid-Atlantic. Like, I'm not exaggerating.
Oh, wow.
And so it was many trips of prepping wood, um, highlining it down to stage it, then the actual building. And the building for that project, we had power tools on site, with the generator and stuff.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I don't know. I forget how many steps. Maybe it's 100 feet run and 75 feet tall. It's huge. But, just big stuff that a regular maintainer is not
Obviously, yeah.
going to do.
And you need a crew. I mean, you need a group of people to do that kind of work. It's not, it's not one person isn't going to be able to move all those timbers or rocks or whatever. You definitely need the manpower or woman power.
Well, you can't put a crane out there, right?
Exactly.
So it's either moving it with humans, just brute force, humans with mechanical advantage, like rock bars and stuff, or humans and machines, as in like grip hoists and mast dams, with the rigging. Yeah, it takes a crew. Even if it's a crew of a half dozen, it takes a crew.
Yeah. And I like the way you describe all that because it also explains, I mean, the work that you do, but also that camaraderie. And it explains why the crews are so long lasting as well and why you guys are working so well together because it seems like the work you do is so important. It's so purposeful.
Well,
And
yeah. And I mean, this came up in a conversation a few months ago with another host. And like, how do you get people to come back out? Right. It's easy to get someone to come out on a crew and do trail work for the first time, kind of. How do you get them to come back out? It's like, well, they need to feel safe.
right.
They need to feel valued, and they need to feel like purposeful, like what they did had value.
Exactly.
And the feeling, we do stuff that frankly is like a high risk of injury. Whether you work at a desk 5 days a week and come out on the weekend, or whether you're really fit, there's a lot of body mechanics that come into it. And so, and sometimes we're far away from like an ambulance, right?
Yeah.
And that's where it comes back into like the safety planning, helping people understand what to expect when they come out, especially their first couple times, what they need to bring to keep themselves safe, and then what you need to provide, like PPE,
right,
and help people understand how to use it properly. And also let people know that you have a plan in case someone gets hurt, because if you don't have a plan, someone's going to take over, hopefully. But that's not the point, right? You need to let people know that like we've thought about it. This is our plan. If someone gets hurt, this is what we're going to do. This is what we have on hand, etc. And people when they feel safe, valued, and purposeful, you get a lot done, and people like it, and they come back out.
Awesome. Great points. I think that is the draw. And I also have to say, you know, seeing you guys in action, it's that feeling, that great spirit of camaraderie, that and that family feel. I mean, you guys, when I first, because I saw Cadillac Crew, I think it was at Blackburn, that's the crew I saw. And it was just this great spirit, and they were just so friendly. And, you know, I just happened to hike in for the night, and they were just so welcoming to me. I mean, I'm just showing up. They don't know who I am, but they were just really nice to engage. And they were very eager to share what they were doing as well, and explaining what they were doing, which really gave me a greater sense of appreciation for what they were doing too. And I could express that because I just enjoyed some of the work that they had done getting in safely to the center for the night. I wanted to shift gears a little bit because we're coming up on 7:30. We're going to start taking questions from the audience. But you have earned a variety of certifications with a number of organizations. So you've had this career going, this volunteer career. So I was wondering if you could share your story a bit about that, and you know how you got involved, and also maybe how you included your daughter and have been volunteering as a family, and what that has meant, you know, to you, what the rewards and challenges have been.
I would love to. And there was a glitch in the feed when you first started talking. So were you asking about like how I got involved in trail work, or how I got involved in chainsaws?
Why don't we talk about the chainsaw bit, because we haven't really talked about that. And I'm sorry, and I'm going to say this, I don't care, it's public, it's a badass move. I just think it's just badass, not just that you operate a chainsaw and you train people how to operate, but you now train the trainers. It's, you know, it's that Sigourney Weaver move, you know, and Aliens with the gun. It's, I don't know, it's just an amazing thing to see a woman out there doing in a very male-dominated world.
Well, and while I'm starting to talk, I'm going to actually put on my helmet and stuff, because it's just, for me, that's like, I really enjoy the gear. And I also want to make
it have the outfit.
I know. I want to make a small correction. So I'm a trainer for the Park Service, but I'm not a trainer for the Forest Service. That would be a C Sawyer evaluator, and I do not have that credential yet. And so for two people in the world that might know what I'm talking about, I just want to be clear. I'm a C. I do C bucking and limbing, but I'm a B feller, and I'm not a instructor Sawyer yet for the Forest Service, but I am for the Park Service. So, you know, I joined PATC. You gotta keep the hair nice. I joined PATC in 2016, and I immediately, even before I went out to the cruise, I checked the calendar, which is how I found out about the cruise, and I saw they had chainsaw training, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. But I'm just gonna sign up for that. Didn't even think anything about it. So I ended up going out with Cadillac Crew, and on my second Cadillac Crew trip was actually at Blackburn, and I talked to Chris Brenton and Robert Fina, and I was like, so how do I sign up for chainsaw training? And they're like, well, Chris told me what he knew. I followed through with what he shared, which was, you know, you talk to this person, and you kind of need a reason to get trained. You can't just show up. But Cadillac Crew agreed that I could basically get trained as a Sawyer for Cadillac Crew. I was like, great. So my first training was with Peter Jensen, who had come down from Vermont, and he's a contractor. And Peter Jensen is like 2 inches taller than me, maybe. I'm 5'4", and just stoic Vermonter chainsaw expert. And he was so cool, and his chainsaw wasn't very big, and I was like, I want to be a chainsaw instructor, because this guy is exactly what I want to be. And so I just kind of filed that away, and I should have brought the saw in, although actually I think it's at Robert's. So a couple months later, I was the district manager at C&O Canal. And at that time, for Forest Service, you needed a different card than the Park Service card. Different, and each of the parks had a different program, right? This is like Pokemon, like you had to collect them all. If you're I was like, I'm getting every card. So at my chainsaw class at CNO, John Adams is a safety officer, and he, a couple of days into the class, he's like, by the way, if you want to come to our train the trainer class, let me know. And I was like, I walked up, I was like, hey, John, can I be in that train the trainer class? And he's like, yeah, Martha, sure. And I was like, is it a problem that I'm a volunteer? He's like, I don't see why not. I was like, okay. So that was a couple months later. And so I did the trainer class. It was like a 2-week, well, it was a trainer class. It was not a train the trainer, it was a trainer class. And so I did the trainer class, which is a 2-week thing. And, I loved it. John and I, we make a good team. And, we're talking, and the Park Service is kind of like growing their chainsaw program, and things are going to become more like national, like they were with the Forest Service. And John Adams needed trainers for the trainers, because it was just like him and another person or two. And we were talking about it. He's like, well, I'm going to be doing another train the trainer here in a few months. If you want to come out and help train the trainers. And I was like, I do. And I've been helping John Adams ever since. I've helped train a ton, and there's been, and actually, I guess it was 2018, I think it was, maybe 2019. I pretty much led I've led some of the CSMO classes at CNO, because John Adams is very busy project managing their new building and stuff like that. So we have a close working relationship. I know a lot of the arborists in the National Capital area with the Park Service, which is super cool, because the only thing cooler than running a chainsaw is hanging out with people who run chainsaws for a living. And the stuff you learn from them, it's just fabulous. I've learned so much from those guys. They take me aside, they show me stuff, we trade stories. And Robert and I, through a whole nother side story, we do felling as volunteers, which is unusual, but that was, we were able to do that through like an inn at CNO, and then it grew from there. On the AT. So, meanwhile, Dan DeWicki in PATC is getting together PATC's own chainsaw program, because resources are getting kind of limited, and some of the parks who used to do a lot of our carding through some of the national parks, who would card some of our chainsaw operators that did not volunteer in that park, and they're like, we really need to focus on the volunteers that actually saw in our own park, which is, honestly, it's very reasonable. But then PATC was like, well, then what? How do we get these people? Right. So anyway, Dan DeWicki laid a lot of groundwork. He handed the baton to me, and I worked closely with him. Like, okay, so how do I become a trainer with the Forest Service? Like, how can I card people under the Forest Service criteria? So he told me what he knew. He's like, you need to go talk to this person, and they need to go to this week-long workshop for the Forest Service. I'm like, okay. He's like, tell them you know me. I was like, okay. So Robert and I were able to do that. And so we went out to Missouri and worked with Ernie Wiltsey, which was the regional 8-9 Forest Service chainsaw program coordinator, and also worked with Pete Duncan, which is the national person period for the chainsaw program for the Forest Service. And we came back to PATC and we're like, we can issue PATC chainsaw cards. We'll do the training. So we do that, and we've done a few classes now. We have a few kinks to work out, because I actually stack of cards on my desk right now that I still need to sign and get out of the training like a month ago. But we got it, we got it. And what's super cool, and I wish I could take credit for it, but it happened without me, is the Forest Service and the Park Service have signed a memorandum of understanding that says if you hold a Forest Service chainsaw card, you can saw in the Park Service. And if you hold a Park Service chainsaw card, you can saw in the Forest Service. Great. It's like, imagine if you needed a new driver's license for every state you went in. Like, that's
Oh,
what it was. It was kind of how it was. So things are better. And for people who have questions on that, there's still some of the details getting worked out to the logistics of it. But the fact that that MOU is real and it's
oh,
signed.
it's huge.
Yeah. And as far as I know, the different entities in our area are honoring it. They're just sort of figuring out kind of like what that means.
Right.
So, and I'll
Right.
take off my cool gear now. But, you know,
Well, before you take off the gear, I mean, obviously these are safety pieces.
yeah.
So why don't you just point out, like, so you have the safety glasses and you have a hard hat. So what else would you need to stay safe? Like,
Sharp chain. Okay. So, there's there's 5 pieces of PPE that are required for it to operate a chainsaw on federal lands, aside from being carded, you know, having your certification. So you need a hard hat, you need hearing protection, you need ANSI Z87 safety glasses. They don't have to be as fancy as these, but they need to be ANSI Z87. You need chaps. So I have a pair of, this is where I stand up, a pair of chainsaw chaps, which are super cool, that you wear on your legs. And the way they work is they're full of a material that if the chainsaw cuts them, it binds up the sprocket and freezes, you know, it freezes everything up.
oh, awesome. Yeah.
And then optionally, which I wear a lot, are the chainsaw pants, which is the same concept, just pants format. And they look cool. And then the Forest Service requires 8-inch steel-toe boots. Park Service is a little more lenient. I really like the steel-toe boots for all trail work, no matter what I'm doing, frankly. So I'm a big fan of those. And this is another kind of, this helmet is good too, but this is not a Z87 protection. It's just this like just sawdust and little debris. This is not ANSI Z87. You got to have the safety glasses. This is not a replacement. But these kind of hard hats are fine.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then I would assume that, you know, is that type of gear, can you treat that with permethrin for your tick protection as part of tick prevention, or would you just treat your exposed skin with bug spray or something
I'll
like
tell you
that?
what I do. And honestly, it's a personal preference, but you
Yeah.
have to accommodate for tick protection. Okay. So I use, I always have long sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
I DEET. We also permethrin our clothing just at home, like with a bucket or like a house, the kind of sprayer you'd use for yard
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do the same.
Yep. I feel like you can't do too much.
Well, I was going to ask, how frequently do you do it? Because it appears from what you've described, you are out there frequently, like multiple times a month, and in areas that are probably very tick infested.
Yep.
As you're clearing things.
I don't have a good answer, honestly. I give my stuff to Robert, and he takes care of the permethrin. Couple times a season, like maybe 3.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But at the back of the truck, and usually, you know, at the back of the truck, I'm putting the DEET, and then I also have it in my pack. But that's why I like the long sleeves, though, is because the DEET's not on my skin because we use it so much.
Right.
So I do both.
Awesome.
You gotta have something though, and as
Yeah.
much like natural stuff, I go with the DEET because
Okay.
Lyme disease is horrible.
Yeah. Long time sufferer here for that. So I permethrin and spray constantly so I don't get bit again. Awesome. I'll let you take off your cool gear. I love the outfit. I did want to talk while, you know, and our guests can put questions in the chat if they'd like to. While I wanted to just talk a little bit about what hikers and users of trails can do to help y'all out to minimize the impact on the trails. And, you know, we can talk about what they can do, and also should they or how can they report issues they might see while they're out there hiking.
That's a good question. Let me answer that one first because I'll forget if I don't. So I don't have a quick answer for how to report issues, but us as district managers or maintainers, it's really nice to have the hikers' eyes and ears. I know that for some of the regulars at my partner's district, he literally gives them his email because he runs into them
Mm-hmm.
and they talk. Same with mine. And also I know John Rent, who is the district
He's
manager.
in my district. Yeah, I have his email.
Yeah. So you
I
might
do report.
get the email. So
Yeah.
the PATC website, if you poke around, sometimes you can find the district managers. Every once in a while, there will be information left at the trailhead, or on sometimes there's a QR code that might have some information. I don't have a crisp answer for you though.
Okay.
If you see folks, if you're hiking, right? So if there's places you hike often and you see people out there doing trail work, talk to them and be like,
Yeah.
hey, is this your section or what are you doing? Da, da, da.
Exactly.
And if it is their section, you can be like, can I report issues to you? I can't think of a better, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think better. If I think of a better one, I'll give it to you guys.
Yeah.
Send it along.
Awesome. Awesome. And then the first part of that question was what can hikers and users do?
Right. Okay. So, in no particular order, I have three things. Okay. First one, stay on trail. I know it's tricky when when the trail's really wet. But do your best to stay on trail, right? If there's little rocks to pick your way over, okay? Because the more we widen the trail, the bigger the impact is. And you don't know what you're impacting, frankly, right? And also stay on trail when it comes to cutting switchbacks.
Mm.
Okay, and I have a great picture of that. We could go to that. Because usually people cut a switchback, they're making a fall line trail and it is just erosion town. And it gets worse because it only takes a few people cutting it before it's visible. Right. Then other hikers are like, oh, I'm gonna take the shortest route.
Exactly.
Same thing when it goes to like overlooks and waterfalls and all those kinds of things. You know, I know you're like, well, what am I not going to do? Am I not going to go to the waterfall? Well, okay, stay on a trail that's already there. Okay, even if it's a user created trail, like please don't make another one. Because you know it's the endangered plants and the sensitive animals and the erosion issues. They all exacerbate, and it doesn't take much use. Like it doesn't take many times for someone to walk across a little stretch of land before it's difficult to recover from. That's the one. Stay on trail. 2, water bottles. I'd say the number one trash item we see out there is disposable water bottles. If you're someone who uses disposable water bottles, keep really close track of it and take it out with you because they don't go away. They might leave that area. They go to the creek, which goes to the river. They never really go away. So take them and dispose of them properly. You know, with recycling, there's debate on the recycling versus trash for plastic. Just don't leave them out there. And obviously a good answer to the water bottle issue is to take a reusable water bottle. But look, you know, if you're out there with a water bottle, whether it's reusable or disposable, don't leave it behind. Keep really close track on it. And that might be with the guests that you have hiking out there with you too. Maybe folks who don't hike much, and they have some, you know, disposable water bottles and you see them sort of like set it down. Take it out. You hiked it in, it's lighter now, take it out. There's no trash pickup, folks. Third one is dog poop bags. Similar issue to water bottles, because like now it's like dog waste and plastic. And so even if it's a compostable poop bag, it's not going to compost just sitting there in the next near future. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it's left behind, it's trash. There's no park staff picking those up. Okay. And there's very few volunteers picking it up. All right. Sometimes hikers pick it up, but now they're picking up your trash. So take them out with you. You know, I've definitely had questions like, well, I don't want the poop to escape in my backpack. I was like, well, then there's got to be a solution for that, right? Like maybe you have a food container at home or a Tupperware container or a reusable jar and you just put the poop bag in the jar or something, but don't leave it behind. Because it's also kind of like visual trash to other folks walking, right? Because like, it's not just a poop bag that you left behind. Not everyone else has to look at it. And they didn't go out to hike in the woods and look at poop bags.
Right, exactly.
You didn't go out in the woods and look at poop bags. So just take them back with you.
Exactly.
So those are my big three. There's other ones, but stay on trail. The water bottle issue. Yes, there's a ton of other trash, but that one is just really, they don't go away.
No.
And
No, and I see a lot of that too. And the poop bags, I'm with you. Because those are the ones I least like to have to take off the branch of the tree or go. And then sometimes they fling them into the woods and you see them hanging and you're like, you know, how do I get to it? Because now I've got to step on the vegetation and go off trail to get it and nobody wants to see it. And yeah, no, please,
it's not better.
pack it out. Pack it out.
Flinging it is not better.
No.
Yeah, and again,
exactly.
I get it, but figure out a way to hike it out.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that, because that is good advice. We do have a question, and I think this something you can definitely speak to. Kirsten asked, what programs can families with children participate in? And I think you and your daughter have shown that you can do a lot of this together.
Yeah. So my daughter was 6 when I started doing this. And it's basically, she either was coming with me or I couldn't do it. So, you know, PATC doesn't have like any particular, like the family, you know, crew. I ended up talking to like a couple different crews and told them that I had my kid and they're going to come out with me. And the one person was like, well, that wouldn't be a good fit. And I was like, okay. But Cadillac Crew with open arms had come on out. So I think my advice to someone who's a parent who wants to bring their kids out is, one, be realistic in your expectations for the day. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going out there to work, but you're also, honestly, it's kind of an experience for you and your family. Okay. So if you have little ones, help make the work accessible to them, right? Which could be working with the crew leader, like, hey, what could we do today that would be useful that they could actually do, and they can help you find something to do. Don't expect your like 6-year-old to like use a Picmatic for 6 hours straight. Like, they're never going to want to come back. You won't either. And also, I would say I would work with the if you're going to do a crew, work with the crew leader. Like, hey, work together on it, right. Basically. And being a section maintainer with kids, honestly, I think is pretty easy. Mm-hmm. Depends on your home situation. But everything that I have done as a section maintainer, I've been able to do with my daughter out there with me. Mm-hmm. Again, she was 6 when we started. That's different than like 2 or 3. But if you have a situation to where you can do some stuff, like it's not the whole, it's not, again, are we talking 2 adults and a couple kids, 1 adult and 4 kids? There's definitely options, but the maintainer work, depending on the section, I think can be really accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say over the years with my 3 sons, because they're all young adults now, but when they were younger, we were in the scouting program and we did some work along the Appalachian Trail pulling invasives. We worked with different organizations and we would spend the morning, maybe 2 or 3 hours with the youth, helping them, they would learn how to identify and pull the invasives. And then, we'd have lunch and then we'd go hike. So they were doing important, purposeful work, but then we had a little fun after that. And so we've
adults.
Exactly.
We get ice cream afterwards.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that was the other thing. It was, what's the food? What's the dessert? Like what are we offering as the snack or the lunch? That's always part of the deal. And playing a game or something. It was always what activity was going to follow it. And maybe we're hiking to a waterfall or a swimming hole. so that, you know, after this hot work, because, you know, they're all in these clothes and doing this hot work, they can cool off and have some
And,
fun.
you know, when I say sort of like check your expectations, like, you know, this is not a competition of
Right.
how much trail work you can get done with a kid. It's an experience. It's a little piece of your lifestyle, right? And this is also part of their growing up. So, you know, Eddie is still a little too short to run a weed whacker, but she could run loppers from her first trip. And lopping, like trimming the vegetation of loppers, is a huge part. Show them how to do it right from the get-go.
Right.
And then try to stay out of their hair. You don't have to micromanage it, right? And when you see a cool bug, stop and check out the bug or the turtle or whatever. So I think there's a, I don't know, do what works for you as a parent, but
Right.
it's not
And
the time to be competitive or.
Right. And I'll mention another opportunity too. I know through the PATC, there's also shelter maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
And I've noticed that, like, our particular AT community group has adopted a shelter that we're maintaining. And we have in our volunteer corps several families who have joined that effort, because it's something that they can do together. And, you know, I don't want to say it's easier, but it is
kind of, because
but it is kind of, especially with families and with kids, and they're going to the same place, and they get an expectation and where everything is, and then they start getting ideas about what else can we do, or, you know,
and not only that, it becomes a familiar location. The kids might find a favorite spot, and the kids don't have to work the whole time.
Right.
Maybe you set up with them that there's an expectation that they do a task on every trip, but, you know, trash pickup, okay? It's a vital task, whatever. Or maybe your kids do like tools, and like they like to run a screw gun, and so they're going to run the screw gun for a while you guys replace the siding or something, whatever.
Right.
But the rest of the time, give them some boundaries and they can play.
Exactly. Exactly. And because there's space to do it, and it's a safe space, right? Because you have this area around the shelter, and it's a defined space. You can keep track of them, you know, as opposed to getting spread out over a trail that everybody's working on or maintaining.
The percentage of hours that Eddie was on crew trips and was not working is high, but because she would have like a little tarp, like a tent footprint that was hers, that they did her little station.
Right.
She could bring books. She can go collect bugs. You know, and there's plenty of trips where she worked the whole time, but sometimes she'll be like, do I have to work? I'm like, no, you have to stay out of the way. And I don't want we have to figure out what your boundaries are so you're not lost.
Right. Well, I like that idea where she had a defined space that she could be in and do her activities that she brought along, or explore a little bit. Maybe she could have a nature journal and draw, depending what the kids like to do. Yeah, all great ideas. Thank you. Barbara, I was wondering if there were any questions that came through on the Facebook page while we were chatting.
Yeah, so a couple people wanted to know if you're able to go hike for fun, or are you always looking at what could be tweaked or improved? And if so, what are some of your favorite places?
Okay. Three-part answer. First of all, I've never been a huge hiker. I enjoy it, but there's other things to do. 2, trail work will ruin your hiking experience because all you're going to see is issues. And I really enjoy the trail work. And 3, my favorite places. I'm such an irregular hiker. My partner is a very regular hiker, and I just like, where do you want to go? And go where he goes. Actually now out near Big Schloss. I've only been out there once or twice, and it's Beautiful. 7 ponds or something like that. It's just stunning. I'm also really easily impressed. So pretty much anywhere I go, I'm like, oh, it's pretty. I also really like it at Sino Canal. I really like the Ford Mine Trail. It's a sleeper. No one hikes it. Do the whole thing. It's a little lollipop. It's really pretty back there. You'll be surprised.
And a second question, just kind of, you had alluded to the trails being built in the 1930s. So was this the Depression CCC area work, and it's lasted all this time because of your work and club's work, crew's
Yeah.
work? Okay.
Yeah, mostly because of how good they did it.
Oh, really? Really?
So, I mean, we have trails from all eras in our area. Like the Billy Goat Trail, they think Native Americans were using it before Europeans.
Sure. Okay.
That's in CNF now. So, you know, in Shenandoah, there's a lot of CCC era trails.
Okay.
I was actually on a cool thing out there in December with a guy who showed us how to recognize CCC era crib work. You know, this trail was built up, and now that he's shown it to us, like then you start seeing it. It's like seeing ghosts.
Everywhere.
Oh, sweet.
And it's really cool. So, you know, some of it has degraded and there's work that needs to be done to restore it. But yeah, we have some really cool CCC era trails that I don't know if there's a resource people can like see a map of it or not. I'm sure there's resources online.
Well, that is a point, and that we will, those of you who've registered, will get some information from Martha and how to details, contacts, website, and we'll send that out in several days. So maybe that'll be something. Okay. Oh, and here's a question. Do you know of any books or articles about CCC work? Just came in, so. Yeah, uh-oh, one moment, please.
Well, you know, there's one in this pile of stuff behind me.
Okay, well, we can share that. We can share that with.
You know what? Well, I'll have to get it later, but it's very
Perfect. That's fine. That's fine.
It's specifically on the CCC, and it yes.
Yeah, I actually think the Shenandoah National Park Visitor Center, I recall seeing a book there about the CCC. Now, I don't know if it's specifically about the trail building, or it might encompass that, but I think it talked all about their work within the national park and what they were building and the roads and everything in the buildings, if I remember correctly. I don't think, I'm looking on my shelf because I'm wondering, I may have a copy as well, but we'll have to look through our stacks of resources and we'll get that information to Barbara to share with all of our audience.
Share with it. And if, Martha has lists of where people can find out about classes or workshops, and I guess it might be the PATC website with that, or we can. Okay.
So I think I'm going to talk, but this information will be included on the info sheet that's going to come out in a few days.
Okay. Perfect.
The big picture is at PATC website. It's not always the easiest to use when you want to go volunteer. So there's a few different places to get in touch with volunteer opportunities.
Perfect.
Yeah, I do believe they still have a calendar, and if you see events on the PATC calendar and you click on the event, there will be information at the bottom with a point of contact. That's usually good. And then in the list, I will have some of the district managers sort of for the area of where you guys are.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
Which is a pretty nice way. And then if you click on, back to the calendar, if you click on the individual crew items on the calendar, there'll be a point of contact. And it's a pretty.
Thanks. Well, we'll get that address in the information. So. That's the main ones I see so far. Questions? So, whoops. Sorry, Eva. Are you hearing a 5 sirens here from me? I don't know. So
we did a little bit, but I did want to. We're on the 8 o'clock hour. But Martha, I was wondering if you had anything else you'd like to share. Any other thoughts about tonight's topic?
I do, because I feel like we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. We didn't talk about trail building or sustainable trail design and layout. I feel like we could have come back to it more, and I'm realizing time's up. What I want folks to realize is sustainable trail design and layout. The trails that we hike on, think of it as infrastructure, okay? And you wouldn't just willy-nilly put some random roads through town, right? They work better if they're planned, built to spec, and they actually meet the needs of the people who are going to be driving on them. So you can think of trails as that way. Sustainable trail design and layout. There's a whole, it's a whole thing to learn and get into. You know, there's, and I'll put these resources in the stuff, but there's IMBA, the International Mountain Bike Association, has really great books on trail design and layout. I really like their drawings. Yes, it says mountain bikes, but it's the same ideas. There's another book called Natural Surface Trails by Design, which talks about more of the aesthetics and how do you design a trail that people actually want to use and they actually want to come back and they enjoy, and it demystifies some of that. And then the USDA has a cute little pocket guide. You can get the PDF online, or you can actually like write to them and they'll send you a box if you need a box of them. It's called Trail Construction and Maintenance Notebook. This is not a great single covers everything resource, but when it comes to, you know, trail features, how to build lasting rolling grade dips and stairs and crib steps. It has really good illustrations. And then, you know, the workshops that Robert and I put on, you know, we're not the only humans in the country putting on these workshops, but we are local. You know, we can help get you into, as far as for hiking trails, things to consider so that you have a sustainable trail. And look, we're not talking about like a whole new 50 miles of trail. We're talking about, you know, if you do a substantial relocation around a section of trail that's failing, or you have a long fall line trail that's just eroding to death, you know, and it's like 500 meters long, you need to do a relocation. This applies. Otherwise, you're just repeating the same mistakes, you know, and we can't just keep doing it. Mm-hmm. We can't just keep throwing humans, you know, volunteers at this, doing the same mistakes again and again and again. So I could talk about it for days, but I just want to let folks take that with them. The sustainable trail design and layout. It's not just words. There's a whole system to go about it.
Right. Thank you for that. And I think it's also important too in our area, because we have the new Shenandoah Rails to Trails program coming in. And we can take all of these concepts and everything we talked about tonight and think about it in terms of how we have this new rail to trail that's going to come through so many communities, linking all the communities, but now how do those individual communities connect to it? Yeah. So it may mean that these communities are going to have greenways or connector trail systems. So, you know, the sustainable trail design and concepts are going to apply there as well. You know, so how are people not just going to connect to this new trail, but as you're walking along this trail, you're going to come into the communities to get a cup of coffee or lunch or ice cream, or to some other amenity in the community that you may want to experience. Maybe it'll take you to the stream or the river. Maybe you want to go fishing for the afternoon, or go for a float. So all of these concepts will apply in that situation as well. And I foresee a lot of trail talk in the next few years as this project gets underway, because there appears to be a great underswell of support for it.
Well, there is, and to tie everything full circle, you know, those conferences I mentioned, the PTVA conference, the American Trails International Symposium, this is what's happening there, especially at International Trails Symposium. You know, the number of talks I've been to that are exactly what you're talking about. You know, how do we do this right? How do we meet the needs of the community? How do we identify the needs of the community? They're super important, and it's an infrastructure that sort of like, when it's done right, it gives back, because it helps people's fitness, it helps their mental well-being, it helps reduce carbon emissions because people aren't driving to the bar, they're walking to the bar on the trail. So it's big stuff, and it's happening in little towns and big cities, and it's really exciting.
It is. Well, thank you, Martha, so much. The information you've shared with us tonight has been amazing. It's been very informative. I hope that those in our audience now has a greater understanding of our trails and how we need to make them sustainable and how we need to protect them and what we can do to lessen our impact, and maybe start thinking about trails in different ways as well. So thank you so much. I'm sure there's so much more we could talk about. Maybe we will in a future segment. Barbara, do you have any closing words for
Thank you.
our
I
audience?
agree. Inspiring along the way too, and I encourage everybody to look for an email from us with a lot of more information from Martha. So thank you so much, and thank your daughter for joining us too.
Thank you for letting her sit in for a second.
Absolutely, she's adorable, and thank her too for her service, because you know her volunteer hours are valued as well, and I see a great future for her as well. So thank you, and to our audience, thank everyone for joining us tonight. And look for our next segment next month on the third Thursday, where we're going to explore the outdoors with physical limitations. So we're going to explore that and give you some ideas of things you can do and places to go to enjoy the outdoors, even if you may have some physical limitations that may be a little bit of an obstacle or something that you see as preventing you from getting out there. And we'll show you ways that you can still get out there and enjoy the great outdoors. So thanks again to everyone. So find your trail and hike it. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll see you next month.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks again, Martha.
Bye.
Thank you.